Hi, and welcome this evening. It's so nice to have you here tonight to connect with and to talk about our topic for this evening, which is how to disagree without a fight or taking flight. I chose this topic because it's one that I see regularly in the people that I work with, whether it's trying to find agreement in areas where you really see things from a different perspective, whether it's disagreeing with people that are important to you in your life, whatever it may be. We're always trying to find agreement. And so how do we live in a world where we're not always going to find agreement? Part of what makes this conversation so interesting to me is that the greatest potential we have as human beings is to create with another. I mean, the symbolism of this is life, where we are able to bring life into the world through working with somebody else. So if you struggle you can't do that on your own. And that's why it's so important to learn the skill of agreeing. Now, for those of you not familiar, my name is Colin Matthews. I'm an intuitive counselor. I work one-on-one with people using my intuitive gifts to help clarify and discern what's going on for you, where you're investing your energy, what may or may not be working for you, and what you can do to work in a more effective or empowered way. So I'm sharing this perspective with you this evening, an experience that I have in helping people to find agreement with others. This is a great topic. If you have areas where you're struggling to deal with disagreement, you can email me at the email address that's listed below if you'd like, or you can write into the comments as well with the situation. Colin, I'm having trouble with this situation, and we'll see if we can help you with finding a way to either be okay with disagreeing or to find agreement. So to start off with, it's really important. I think it's really important for you to be able to identify what is going on for you when you don't agree with somebody. Most of us tend to, when we don't agree with somebody, fall into one of two camps. Either we fight to get our way, or we take flight and say, forget about it, and walk away from the situation. So we don't seek to find agreement. We either fight for our way, or we take off because we don't think we're going to get our way, as opposed to holding out for the third solution, which is our way. And that's a phrase that I like to encourage for this evening. There's your way, there's my way, and then there's our way. And when we're creating with others, we're seeking an our way, which is challenging because one person may not be able to or willing to hold space for other people's ideas. You may not be willing to hold space for other people's ideas. You may not be willing to fight for what matters to you, and others may not be willing to fight for what matters to them. So how do we do so? In a way, it's easier to say what not to do when you are disagreeing with somebody, because agreement takes creativity. And because agreement takes creativity, there isn't a one solution fits all on how to find agreement. But there are things to adhere to avoid when you are disagreeing with somebody, because it's guaranteed they're not going to create the solutions that you want. And that would be fighting or taking off, flighting, right? Fighting or flighting. Those are the two ends of the spectrum that are not going to get your needs met. So I have a 4-step prescription on how to deal with a disagreement with somebody else. And we'll go through them. And as always with the teachings that I offer through the work I do with people, this is about being the change that you want to see in the world within yourself. It's not about demanding the world to change. It's about identifying, can you do that within yourself? And that is so true for disagreeing. If you want somebody to be able to skillfully disagree with you, you have to be able to skillfully disagree with them. And if you can't disagree with the other person, if you can't skillfully disagree with them, it's unrealistic for you to expect them to skillfully disagree with you. So going back to Gandhi's teaching of be the change you want to see in the world, this is a wonderful way to start in the conversation. Okay, so what do you not want to do? You want to discern if when you are trying to find agreement with somebody, are you fighting for your way, or are you giving up because you don't think you're going to get your way? I came up with an example for the talk this evening of a disagreement that was present in our house years ago that we found solution to. So if you have areas that you disagree with somebody or you're having trouble, once again, please write in because I'd love to hear about that. This one has to do with our toaster. So my wife is a minimalist. She likes clean, open spaces. And so when we first moved in together, her desire was to have the toaster underneath the counter in a cupboard. It's out of the way. We're not using the toaster all the time, so we don't have to have counters filled up with toasters. I, on the other hand, wanted to have the toaster out so that when I wanted toast, I had the least amount of resistance that was going to get me to making my toast in the morning. So if the toaster is out, I don't have to take it out. I don't have to put it away. Saves me time. For me, I was trying to get efficiency. For her, she was trying to have the toaster put away. And what I love about this example is there isn't a compromise. Like there isn't like leave the toaster in an open cupboard or, actually that would be a solution if we could have like a breakfast nook that you open the doors and the toaster's already plugged in and set up and you put the toast down. That'd be a pretty sweet solution. But unfortunately for us, that wasn't a possibility. So it's either her way or my way. And what do we do in this situation? So my first step for you is to discern in the place that you're trying to find agreement with somebody, are you fighting them or are you resigning or taking flight in that? What do I mean by that? I want the toaster out and then I'm going to share my points. I don't want to have to put it away and take it out. Your way is controlling. Your way is not easygoing enough for me. I may put forth my points, but I may amplify it a little bit as well too, where instead of just trying to say, I think it's, not a smart idea for this one, but I want to win. And so I won't hold space for your ideas, or I won't agree, or I'll fight with you. The challenge in this is how the other person decides. So let's say I fight with the toaster. I want it my way. If I win the fight, but my wife doesn't agree with me, she's like, fine, whatever you want. We'll put the toaster, we'll leave it on the counter. That's fine. I'm going to pay for that later. Anytime you coerce somebody, you shame somebody, you demand something of somebody to put them down, you win the fight. If they're not like, I'm willing to do this, I'd like to give this a try, you're going to pay for it in some other way, because while they may do things your way, they won't have agreed on the inside, and that's going to create residue. And that's going to create resistance in the future. I'm going to pay for that somewhere later because sure, I won the toaster war, but I'm going to lose another war somewhere else. That's inevitable in this power dynamic of winning versus losing. Same thing, if I'm like, if she's like, no, I want the toaster to be put away, and she fights, and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, we'll do it your way. And I've resigned myself in that, she's going to pay, right? One of us is going to pay. And so the first thing to do when you're trying to find agreement, notice, are you trying to get your way, or are you giving up and letting them have their way? Or are you holding space for our way, the way that incorporates those two things? And the first step is so important, is that likely the person you're talking to is either fighting with you or they're flighting and taking off, like, oh, whatever you want, you do your own, whatever you want, I don't care. And the challenge in that is one of you is going to pay for it. If you can't identify if you are fighting or flighting, you're not going to be able to identify if the other person is fighting or flighting. So the first one is to hold responsibility to yourself. I'm not going to fight and say it's my way, and I'm not going to flight and say, fine, I don't care. I'm going to instead hold a third space. So the second step, first step, discern if you're fight or flight. Second step is, can you clearly articulate what the other person wants? I hear that you would really like to have the toaster put away. You appreciate having a clean and open space. You feel more at ease in the kitchen when the toaster's not out. Every time you look over, it feels like another thing you have to do. If I can acknowledge what is true for the other person, they're much more likely to feel seen, understood, appreciated, cared for, and that can make it easier to come to some kind of agreement. If right away I'm like, hey, I hear that how important that is for you, they're more likely to soften a little bit. Now, it's not a guarantee. They might be like, yeah, that's totally what it is, so we're going to do it my way, right? Like they may want to fight for it. And so first step, discern if you are fighting or flighting. Second step, if you can't clearly articulate to the other person what it is they want and why, where they say, yeah, that's totally it. You haven't fully understood them, and you can't really do the third step, which is to make a request instead of a demand. So demands are, I don't want the toaster out. It's driving me nuts. Can we just put it away? Or I'm wondering if you'd be willing to leave the toaster out. I don't want to have to take it out every single time. It stresses me out. I know you're not crazy about having it on the counter, but would you be willing? And so the third step is to make it as a request where there isn't a power struggle. And now the fourth step is a tricky one, which is to discern. Are you agreeing to one side or the other because they're winning the fight, because they are in flight and I don't care, you do whatever you want, or because you're finding some kind of agreement? And so to be clear with the toaster example, we put the toaster away. This is one where I said, you know what, I hear how much you would really like to have the clean counter, and let me give it a try. Let's put it away. Let's see what happens when we do that. And then sure enough, we went and did that. And I've come to really love having the toaster not on the counter. It feels much more clean and open in the stove. And so I actually got to receive something from my wife that I hadn't perceived. I wanted the ease of toaster out. We ended up putting the toaster away. Now, going into to discern, I was agreement. That was like, you know what, we'll try. I felt as though she understood that I really wanted to have more ease, but I also understood how she wanted more ease. The funny thing is we actually wanted the same thing. We just had a different strategy. My ease was coming from not having to take it in or out. Her ease was coming from having things put away and be in a clean, open space. And I felt like she could articulate what was going on for me, which made it easier for me to articulate what was going on for her. But even if she couldn't, can I articulate what's going on for her to support her, which I was able to do. Now, the fifth step, which is the final one, is also a really tricky one. So first step, fight or flight. Discern if you are trying to fight for your way or if you're flighting because you don't think you're going to get your way. And hold for a third space, which is I want agreement. The second step is, can you describe with clarity what and why the other person is wanting? The third step, can you make your request for what you want instead of a demand for it? The fourth one, can you discern if you are in a place of agreement, if you've won the fight, or if the other person has taken flight, or if you've lost the fight, or if you're taking flight? Discern that. And then the fifth step is to petition if the other person, if there is fight or flight, for the opposite. So for example, if I said, fine, whatever, we'll just put the toaster away, I don't care. It's pretty clear in that situation that I'm not really okay with the toaster going underneath, but I feel like it's not going to find agreement, so fine, whatever, we do what you want. And my hope in that situation is that my wife would say, whoa, you seem like you've kind of given up, and that doesn't feel good. I really would like to have the toaster put away, but you feel like you're just giving up on that, and so that doesn't feel good to me. Or it could be the opposite, where I've said, no, I absolutely, we do everything the way you want. I want it to be the way that I want. So I'm leaving the toaster out. And she goes, okay, fine. And then I'd say, well, wait a second. You look like you gave up on that. That doesn't feel good. So it's about making a commitment to your partner that if they are fighting, you either say, I'm doing this, but not because I really agree with it, because I see how much you want it, and I feel like unless I agree with you, there's going to be a war. That doesn't feel good to me. I'm not doing this from a place of openness, but I'm doing this from a place of trying to create peace between the two of us. So at least maybe I'm flighting, but I'm petitioning for, I'd rather do this in a way that doesn't involve flight, or she's fighting or flighting, and I'm petitioning, hey, you look like you don't really want this. A really good example for this one is intimacy. One partner would like to make love. The other one does not want to make love. Okay, fine, we'll make love. Other partner, not like, yes, awesome. It's like, well, wait a second. You don't seem like you want to do this right now. I feel that. That doesn't feel good to me. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, but at the same time, I don't feel your care that this really matters to me. And it's about caring for the other person. In nonviolent communication, what I'm talking about they call it heart storming. So it's not brainstorming where you're like, we got to find a solution. Let's think about it. Heartstorming is staying in an open place where you're available for what each person is saying and wanting this to be good for both people. Now, the challenge in what I'm presenting is this is so much easier when both people want to find agreement. Even if it's to do things one person's way versus another person's way, that's easier. But what do you do when the other person is not wanting to find agreement? They just want things to be their way. Well, you owe it to them and you owe it to yourself to make requests but not demands. In other words, don't fight for what you want. Stand up for what you want. Petition for what you want. Hold true to what you want. Speak to what you want. But don't try to get it by condemning the other person, shaming the other person, cutting the other person down, and vice versa. You owe it to the other person not to say, find whatever you want. Because as soon as you check out, that's no longer a mutual creation. Now it's just on one person. Now, a narcissist would love that. Narcissist wants you to give up. I always said one of the greatest gifts of Donald Trump is that on one level, if I'm being honest with myself, he wants what he wants more than what I want. And so part of the gift of Donald Trump, in my estimation, is that he invites us to not give up, to be like, no, I'm going to keep petitioning for the thing that I want, and I'm going to hold space until we find agreement. And I'm not just going to go, okay, fine, whatever, man. It's easier just to let you have your way. And that's a commitment to be able to do that. Now, this becomes incredibly difficult to find agreement in particular areas, especially when it comes to areas we get in towards morality or religion. So agreement in morality and religion are really challenging because they both possess what I call the trump card. It's funny, Donald Trump is named the trump card. What is a trump card? A trump card is when you lay something down that, in your opinion, estimation, wins the argument. Well, it's against the law. It's not what God says we need to do this. I'm intuiting that this isn't right for me. And sometimes we make statements like that, not because we're saying, oh, my intuition's telling me this, and it's what I put forward, or what I read in the Bible is this, and therefore what I'm putting forward. It's, I really just want to win the argument, so I'm laying down a trump card to you to try to win. My gut's telling me no. Or God says this is the wrong thing to do, or whatever it may be. And the challenge with trump cards is they are attempts to win or dominate more than they are a statement of what matters to you. And so if someone's laying a trump card down for you, you can take note of that. If you're laying a trump card down, take note of that and hold yourself accountable not to. This is really challenging to be able to disagree because it's painful. And so if you want someone to be able to be okay to disagree with what you're saying, then you need to be able to disagree with what they're saying, where you say, I hear this and I hear you want that, and I just don't agree with that. It doesn't feel right to me. I'm sorry, I thought of one other trump card I forgot to include here. I don't respect you. Respect, God says, my intuition, it's against the law. Those are all trump cards. Well, then if that's what you think, I don't respect you. I'd be okay if you said, if that's what you think, I feel a lot of pain. That I find that really hard to accept. But that's very different than I don't respect you, because I don't respect you is a rejection energy. It's trying to get rid of the other person. Now, part of what's interesting about disagreeing without a fight or flight is I'm not saying it's wrong to fight, and I'm not saying it's wrong to take flight, because there are times that it is appropriate to fight, and there are times it is appropriate to take flight. When is it appropriate to fight? I think in the Second World War, when Nazi Germany was trying to take over the world, I don't know that you could petition for your perspective in a way that both of your needs are going to get met. That one, I think you do need to fight. In nonviolent communication, they call that using protective use of force. And that's when you take up arms not to win, but to protect. And that's a very different circumstance than taking up force to win. Obviously, Nazi Germany wanted to win. And so they're playing a zero-sum game. You don't need to play a zero-sum game. You can take up a fight to protect. So fight when protection is required, no doubt. When do you take flight? So when is it appropriate to take flight? I've had relationships in my life where it was very clear the other person didn't care about what mattered to me, didn't care about my opinion. They just wanted what they wanted, and that was it. And there was no other space for any other conversation. I would call that a toxic situation. And so when someone is toxic, it's okay to take flight. So if it's violent, it's okay, to stand up for yourself. You could take flight if flight creates enough space. I've ended relationships where it was clearly toxic and the space created the ease that I wanted. It's the opposite, take flight. It's funny actually, what got me into medical intuition as a study is I started getting a big bump on my head right here. And I was worried about it. And so I actually contacted a medical intuitive and I said, what's going on? And they said, oh, you're part of a community or family that despite your best efforts doesn't care about your needs, what matters to you. And no matter what you do, they just want what they want. It's like you're banging your head against the wall. And I said, oh, is that why I have a bump in my head? And they said exactly what's going on. So that was the situation. I'm banging my head against the wall. I need to leave. It's time to take flight. So are there times that you disagree? Do you experience disagreements with other people where you can't either just say, well, I don't agree with you and I hope we can find agreement? Are there times that you throw in trump cards? Well, then I don't respect you. Your opinion doesn't matter to me. Are there times that people do that with you? I'd love to hear about situations where you're not able to be at peace in a disagreement. And so just to recap, because we're coming towards the end here, and once again, if anybody is hoping for a reading, I still have a few minutes left to do one. And I do the readings, because it's the work that I do with people, but it's a nice way if you're not sure if I'm the right person to work with you, you just send me your name and your age. And if what I say resonates, it's a great chance for you to discern, is that something I'd like to do? But anyhow, to recap on our conversation here, how do you disagree skillfully? Number one, what are you doing? If you can't tame the dragon inside yourself, if you are fighting because you just want to win and have things your way, you're not going to find a healthy way to agree or disagree. If you are just taking flight, I don't care, whatever you want, withdrawing from the world, that's not going to do it. The second thing, can you clearly articulate what the other person is saying and why they're saying it, or what they want and why they want it, in such a way that they would say, yes, you totally get me. If you can't do that, you're not going to be able to skillfully disagree. The third part, can you petition for what you want as a request? I would really like it if we could put the toaster away. Or do you say it as a demand? If we have to live with the toaster out, I'm done this relationship, I'm leaving. That's a demand, not a request. How would you say that last one as a request? I'm concerned that if we put the toaster away, I'm not going to be able to be in this relationship, and I'll try, but that may feel really negative to me, and I might need to move away. That's a request, not a demand. The fourth point, once you have each stated your position, can you discern if the other person is fighting or taking flight? Can you discern if you're fighting or taking flight? And then the fifth step, if the other person is fighting or taking flight, can you acknowledge and say that? I'm agreeing to this, but not because it's what I really want. Or you seem like you're agreeing to this, but not because it's what you really want. Or can you petition for yourself? I'm not agreeing to this, and it's not what I want. Or I am agreeing to this, and it is what I want. And staying committed to finding a solution that the two of you create together. I hope this has been a helpful conversation this evening. A little different. I skipped notes for tonight because I wanted to see how it would work to be more live and in person. If you preferred it this way, please let me know. If you preferred it with the notes, I'd love to hear that as well too. Hope you all have a wonderful evening. Take care.